It's a wonderful Saturday morning here where I am, and I hope everyone is having a great day as well. As I said, this is It's Getting Better All the Time Mental Health Outreach. You can find out more about us by logging onto our website at igbatt.com, and there you can get information about us as well as information about mental health resources. Today what I wanted to talk about, I wanted to share a particular term with everyone. And I'm going to spell it because I always mispronounce it, but I'm going to spell it. It's Anosognosia. Anosognosia. You may say, well, Sister Arnetta, why are you sharing a word with us that you can't pronounce? Anosognosia, okay? That's not how it's pronounced, but anyway, I wanted to share it because I think it's really so important. Again, you can look it up, Anosognosia. What does that mean? In light of everything that's happening, I wanted to come on and just share a different perspective, or just share another perspective as it relates to that word. What that word basically speaks to the state that a person who has been diagnosed with a severe and persistent mental illness such as schizophrenia or bipolar sometimes gets in when they feel that they do not have to take their medications. And let me read a definition from the Treatment Advocacy Center. Treatmentadvocacycenter.org is a wonderful resource. It is called a lack of insight. Is a symptom of a severe mental illness experienced by some that impairs a person's ability to understand and perceive his or her illness. It is the single largest reason why people with schizophrenia or bipolar refuse medications or do not seek treatment. Without awareness of the illness, refusing treatment appears rational, no matter how clear the need for treatment might be to others. So again, it's a lack of insight. Okay, a lack of insight is a symptom of a severe and persistent mental illness such as bipolar or schizophrenia. It's a symptom, right? And when we talk about a symptom means there's something that's wrong. A symptom is not the issue itself, it's a manifestation of something else, right? So one of the symptoms of a severe mental illness such as bipolar or schizophrenia is a lack of insight. Is the belief that I don't need to take my medication. And it's the reason why a lot of people don't. It impairs a person's ability to understand. So when you talk about why so-and-so is not taking their medications, why is so-and-so off their medication, and you might sit down with the person, try to explain to them why he or she should take their medication. But what you have to understand is not that it's a stubbornness, it's not that it's trying to get attention or anything like that. It's actually a lack of insight. It's a symptom. They have a diagnosis, and one of the symptoms of bipolar disorder for some people is not wanting to take medications. It's just like, for example, if you were diagnosed with diabetes, one of the symptoms of being diagnosed with diabetes is that you might, get headaches or whatever the case is. It's a symptom of that. So you have to keep in mind that you can't blame a person for having a symptom, just like you can't blame a person for having a diagnosis. So again, Anosognosia, it's called a lack of insight. A lack of insight is a symptom of a severe mental illness. It's just like hearing voices, auditory hallucinations, just like delusions, where the mind, the thought, you think certain things. A lack of insight is a symptom of a severe mental illness. So you might see a person that you might think that should know better. I don't know why he just don't get back on his medication. You hear that a lot now with Kanye West, and I don't know why he don't get back on his medications. Well, he's not going to get back on his medications because him being off his medications, if that's the case, is a symptom of his diagnosis. So again, I wanted to come on and talk about this because for some of you, what you see playing out with, and I say allegedly with Kanye West and his family, is something that plays out every day in the lives of a lot of people. many people who are living with a person who has a severe and persistent mental illness go through the same thing. The only difference is that you see it because it's Kim and Kanye, you see it on a large stage. But this is something that goes on every day across America, every day across the world, I guess, when you have someone who is not on their medications. So again, for family members, it can be challenging, it can be a difficult time, and I want to talk about it from both sides. I want to look at some of the things that family members go through, as well as some of the things that the individual who is off their medication also goes through as well. So when you talk about, as a result of that lack of insight and not having a need to take medications, a lot of things can happen. This is 2020, I think sometime in 2019, there was this famous minister, well, I don't know if he's famous, but a lot of people knew him. I had not heard of him until then, but this minister who was, again, off of his medications, and he kept going on YouTube. He was going on YouTube, accusing his wife of cheating, accusing people of doing this to him, just all this type of stuff. And a lot of people thought it was funny. And I guess it is funny when you look at it and you're not living that reality, right? But he was just doing that. And then, calling his wife all kind of names, and it was just a sad thing to watch. That's the reason why many times marriages like that don't last, okay? It's not because I don't love the individual, but sometimes as a family member, you do have to step away from all of that. Because imagine having to live with that every day on a regular basis. It can kind of get old. But let me share something with you. Some of the reasons why people don't take their medications. Now again, I'm going to share with you, this is some reasons why people don't take their medication in general. Fear. Some people may not want to take medications because of the side effects. When you're talking about someone with a severe mental illness, they may not want to take their medications. Number one, lack of insight. They don't see a need. It's not something rational. It's just, I don't see a need to do so. It's actually, as I said, a symptom of the illness. But again, for some, it's a fear of being without the symptoms. Because again, when you're taking the medications are designed to take away the symptoms, are designed to take away the hallucinations. But if the hallucinations and the delusions have become my friend, if the hallucinations and the delusions have become a comfortable place for me, and this is what some people have become a comfortable place for me, I don't like taking the medications, because now that I don't have the medications, now I really have to do life. I really have to kind of learn how to live without the diagnosis. Without the hearing the voices. Think about it, someone like who's on drugs, right? You've been on drugs for so long. Now that you're clean, you have to learn how to live a clean life. And for some people that can be scary, which is why they go back. Same thing, people who've been in the penitentiary for a long time. Now you're out of the penitentiary, right? It's scary because now you have to learn a new life outside of the penitentiary, being free. And some people do go back to the penitentiary. So, and then from a spiritual standpoint, some of us are so used to living a certain lifestyle, a certain way of living, that now that we're in salvation, that we're no longer living that life, it's scary. You want to go back. So relapse happens, I think, in everything, okay? But when we're talking about severe persistent mental illnesses, you have that lack of insight. Another reason is because of for some people, it's the fear of, now what am I going to do? Because think about it. If all of my life, let's say, I've been living with hearing voices, or the symptom that I have, the mania or whatever, is causing me to do 100 things, and I love life. And some of my friends who are diagnosed with bipolar have said this to me. It's that rush, it's that high. You like it. You like that feeling, right? That feeling of being able to do 100 things at once, or that feeling of being able to just pick up and and travel and go across the United States, and that has happened. They pick up, go across the United States, and then when their money runs out, and then when the episode subsides, then they realize, oh shoot, where am I now? So it's that feeling, it's that rush that some people have. So again, now that I'm taking the medications take that away from me. So now the medications take that away from me, and I'm just stuck with me. And I've never learned to live with me. I've never learned to live with who I am, right? Because again, when we talk about severe mental illnesses, many of them begin to manifest at an early age. So again, when diagnosis like that manifests at an early age, then the individual begins to form a life around their diagnosis, and they don't even really realize it. They form a life around their symptoms. Okay, it's just like a fear. Fear is one of those things that we don't realize it, that we actually form a life around fear. Some people are afraid of bridges. So if I'm afraid of going over a bridge, I'm not going to take a job on this side of the town. I'll take a job on the other side of town. If I'm afraid to go outside, if fear has gotten me to that point where I'm afraid to go outside, then my life has become limited. I'm going to have everything delivered to me. I'm only going to go out to the corner. I'm not going to go visit family and friends. I'm not going to be able to do anything with people during the holidays because I have given into the fear. That fear has overtaken me. So we talk about fear. So I'm just trying to get people who don't have a severe and persistent mental illness, or people who don't have a loved one, to kind of understand a little bit kind of what happens, right? So what happens is, for some people, when you talk about severe and persistent mental illnesses, because I've been dealing with this symptoms for so long, this symptom is all I know. The symptom is it's who I am, okay? It's all I know. So once I get to a point where they say the symptoms really get bad and I finally get a diagnosis, something happens in my life and I finally have to come face to face that maybe there's something going on with me, and that I need to see a psychiatrist or other mental health professional, and I start taking medications, and I get a diagnosis. Someone sits down with me and say, hey, this is the reason why from ages 14 through your life you felt this way. This is the reason why you've been hearing these voices, and other people don't hear these voices. And so now I'm at, let's say, 25, 35, I'm coming into this understanding that I thought maybe I was a little off. I wasn't really sure to use that term, but now I actually have a diagnosis. For many people, having that diagnosis is a good thing, because now I finally know, oh my God, I'm just having illness. I have an illness that can be treated. I have an illness that if I take my medications, I can live my life, right? So you go from having the symptoms, not knowing what's going on with you, to actually getting a diagnosis. And for some people, they feel good about getting that diagnosis because now they know. But what happens for some people is, as time goes on, and think about you in your own life, mankind never it's not going to lay down and just accept anything. So first I get the diagnosis, right? I'm excited, or I feel relieved, I should say, that now I know what's going on with me. The doctor says, okay, these are the medications. I'm in therapy. Maybe I'm doing groups. I'm talking to other people, and I'm getting all this great information and insight, and that's fine. But as life goes on, there's a part of us that wonders, maybe can I take my medication, not take my medication, right? We begin to test the diagnosis. Think about, again, when people who are dealing with substance use disorder. Many times they might come to the understanding, okay, I have a substance use disorder. I am, quote unquote, an alcoholic, if I can use that term, right? And then they're fine. They're going through their meetings. They're doing all this good stuff. And then as time goes on, they're like, I'm doing fine. I can have a drink, right? I can hang around people that I know drink all the time. It's fine. If you want to drink, I'm good, right? What do they start doing? They're starting to test the diagnosis, right? I'm going to test. I'm going to really see if I can, if one drink is really going to set me back. So they take a drink. And then they're fine. Okay, see? And then now their ego, their confidence is built back up. Please, I could take a drink. I could take a drink. Then they take another one. And then before they know it, they're back where they started again, right? So that's easier to understand, I think, but it's the same thing that happens with a person with severe mental illness. Remember, having a severe mental illness or severe and persistent mental illness doesn't take away from the fact that the person is still a human being. It doesn't take away from the fact that the person still has thoughts, feelings, and emotions, that the person is still a human being just like you, a person without a diagnosis, right? The only difference is they have a diagnosis and you may not. But again, so the same things that you want out of life, they want out of life, right? The same feelings, like I said, that you have, they have. So I get the diagnosis. I'm told that I have bipolar disorder. Okay, I feel relieved. Now I have a reason why I've been the way I've been. I'm taking my medications for a while. And then as time goes on, I'm like, I'm doing okay without taking all these medications. I'll skip a day. And then, I'll skip a week. And then I'll say, Doc, I'm doing good. Maybe you can decrease my medications. And then they decrease the medications. And what happens is, the longer I go with messing around with the medications, messing around with my treatment, meaning not being as consistent, not taking the medications like I should, and in my mind, I'm okay. I'm okay because it just proves to me that maybe I really didn't have a diagnosis. Maybe I really wasn't as sick as I thought. Same thing when we talk about substance use, right? See, I'm able to take 2 or 3 drinks, and I'm fine. Right? But what happens is the more the person starts lying to themselves and deceiving themselves, they don't realize that they're getting further and further away from their recovery, and they're going backwards. Same thing with the severe and persistent mental illness. As you start out seeing your doctor every month like you're supposed to, and then it slips to once every 90 days, or it slips to, I'll call the doctor whenever I need to call the doctor, or you start out taking your medications. Medications are usually, you get a 30-day supply, usually, okay? And then your family member will say to you, okay, well, how? And I've said this to people I work with all the time. Well, you had been to see us like in about 3-4 months. I know you got to be out of medication. No, I still have medications. How do you still have medications when you got a 30-day supply and the last time you were here was 4 months ago, right? So that tells me that you're not taking the medication. Oh, I just take them when I need them. Okay. What are they doing? They're starting to test the judgment, right? And the longer they go, a person goes with being okay without taking the medication, the more they begin to think, I don't need it, right? Because I'm doing fine. I don't need to go to AA meetings. I'm doing fine without AA meetings. But see, their definition of fine and the family's definition of fine and the loved one's definition of fine, it's not always the same, okay? And I'll talk about, make sure I remember that. I want to come back to that later when I start talking to directly to our loved ones who are diagnosed with a mental illness. But what happens is, so you start getting away, testing the judgment, you start not taking the medications, you start believing that you don't thinking that you don't need to take the medication, because now you have evidence to prove, all right? See, I can point back to the last 1-2 months where I was doing fine. I'm fine without the medications. I'm fine with taking 1 drink. I'm fine with hanging around people who, places, and things that I shouldn't be. I'm okay, right? So now that deception has set in, that wrong belief has set in, and now the person just keeps going. Again, another thing that happens when we talk about fear is that the symptoms now, the symptoms that I used to, I grew up with, that I didn't know, that became friends to me. The thoughts, the feelings, the being able to do 100 things within an hour. Those things really start to manifest, to come back again in full force, and it's like an old friend. It's just like I'm comforted now. Because here's the thing, it's hard. I don't want to use the word. It can be, for lack of a better word, it's hard to live free. It's hard to live differently. If you're used to living a certain way, it's hard to stay on the right road. A lot of times, sometimes people will say to me who are, let's say, in recovery, now that you're clean, they say it's boring. It's boring being clean because I can't hang out with the friends I used to hang out with. The things that I used to do is boring, right? I had more fun when I was doing drugs, when I was drinking. People with severe and persistent mental illness, schizophrenia, and bipolar may not verbally say that, but they'll say, these were my friends, these were people I can hang out with, and what they're talking about for some time is what's going on in their head. Some people, they're hearing voices and seeing things. That's my life. I was doing that all before the medications. Now I'm taking the medications. You've taken away a part of me. Now I have to learn to live without those things. And again, for some people that can be scary. So again, when I'm talking about fear, reasons why people don't take their medication, yes, fear of the side effects. That may be one thing. People, I don't want to take this to the side effects. But when you're talking about somebody with severe and persistent mental illness, you have to really dig deeper. Like you might say side effects, I don't want to gain weight. And that's true. But one of the side effects that people are afraid of who have a severe and persistent mental illness is no longer having the symptoms. Because I'm used to the symptoms now. I like I said before, feeling the way I felt. So it's fear of having to give that up. Misunderstanding. And I'm reading this. Patients may not understand the need for the medicine. Right? Why do I have to take this medication? And when you're dealing with someone who has already gone through, they've taken the medications, they've started to test the judgment, it's harder to get them back on just like that. You want to sit down with them and say, hey, I think you need to get back on the medications. It's harder because in their mind, they have already, how do you say, they have already they have already lived their life without the medication. So again, I wish I should have had a chart. I think it would work better. But kind of, if you can follow me, if I'm going through life, something's going on with me. I'm not sure exactly what it is. Then I start taking the medication. I get a diagnosis. I'm relieved. I'm doing okay for a while. And then as time goes on, I start to test the judgment, meaning I stop not taking my medications. I'm not doing the things I'm supposed to do, not realizing that as I'm getting further away and not taking the medication, I'm actually going further and further down, and that my symptoms are coming back, right? But I don't see that, all right? I don't see that. Many times as you go further and further down and the symptoms start coming, I don't see that until I have to hit quote-unquote rock bottom sometime. Because as I'm going down, in my mind, I don't realize that I'm falling. I don't realize that I'm falling and that the symptoms are now back. And because the symptoms I'm used to the symptoms, right? Because remember, back here, the symptoms were my only friend. Hearing voices, seeing things, the energy, that's comfortable to me. I am more used to my symptoms and the energy that I get from my diagnosis. I'm used to that than I am to taking these medications that take away the symptoms, that decrease the symptoms, right? That life is still new to me. I'm used to the old life. This life is still new to me. So as I'm going down and people are trying to say to me, you need to take your medication, you need to take your medications, I don't see a need to. Lack of insight. And then also the misunderstanding. No, I'm fine. I don't need to do that. And then again, I want to be honest. Sometimes it is too many medications. Some of our loved ones who are dealing with bipolar schizophrenia are on a lot of medication. And I think we need to be honest. First of all, who wants to take medications the rest of your life? Let's just be honest. Nobody wants to do that, right? And I know doctors and nurses will say, well, yeah, if it'll save your life, or you will say that. Well, if it saves your life, you have to take it. But it's easy for you to say that. It's easy for the doctor, the nurse, and all you people to say that because you're not the ones that's taking the medications, right? So I'm not the one that's taking the medications. So sometimes the medication, it is a lot of medications, some people. So it's great if you're a family member and you're advocating for your loved one, or if you're a person with the diagnosis, if you can have a conversation with your doctor to talk about, hey, how can we simplify this medication regimen? Because this is a lot of medication. We do have a lot of new psychotropic drugs now. One of them may work for you. But then you have to also, on the other side, be honest, if is not, if it's not going to work and you do have to take the medications, then you have to kind of get to a point where you have to make peace with that. It gets to a point where, I use the word have to, because nobody has to do anything. It's your life, right? It's my life. You can do what you want, and no one has a right to tell another person what to do. But you have to weigh it. You have to weigh, okay, my goals, the things that I want to do with my life, versus me saying I don't want to take my medication. I don't want to take all these medications. If taking no medications is going to help you to get through what you need to do, then you may have to decide to take it. But again, that's another thing. Lack of symptoms. People who don't feel any differently when they start or stop their medication might see no reason to take it. This happens sometimes with people who are diagnosed with depression, for example. The medications that are being used for depression don't work as quickly sometimes as the medication, as the antipsychotic. So sometimes people would stop taking them for that reason. But again, going back to, like I was saying, how a person gets the diagnosis, they're taking the medications, and then they start to test the diagnosis, meaning they stop taking the medications, they cut back. And it's usually the people who start cutting back, those are the ones that's harder, because see, now they have more evidence. They have more proof to give to us. See, I'm not taking my medication and I'm just fine. I only took one or two. I don't have to take all of those. They don't realize, especially with psychotropic medication, yeah, they start working quicker, but it's not like if you stop taking the medications on Monday, Tuesday you're going to start seeing symptoms. It doesn't work like that for some people. It takes a period of time before you really start seeing some symptoms, and by that time the person is not really seeing it. So there are particular reasons why a person doesn't do that. Okay. Some people have said to me, oh, I don't want to be dependent on medication. The antipsychotic medications are not like that. They're not addictive like that. Now, for people who are taking anti-anxiety medications, they can be, and that's something that the doctors are work with patients on. But again, I want to just focus on the term, the lack of insight is a symptom of severe mental illnesses experienced by some that impairs a person's ability to understand and perceive his or her illness. It is the single largest reason why people with schizophrenia or bipolar don't take their medications. According to the Treatment Advocacy Center, treatmentadvocacycenter.org is a great resource. Approximately 50% of individuals with schizophrenia and 40% with bipolar disorders have symptoms of lack of insight. They have this. So it's not uncommon. So it's not a thing. Again, I want you to understand that a person is not just doing this to be stubborn. They're not just doing this to get on your nerve. They're not just doing this to get attention. It's really a lack of insight. It's a symptom. They really don't, see a need. And it's not the way you would see a need, right? In your mind, when you say, I use the word see a need, you're able to weigh the pros and the cons. With a person with severe and persistent mental illness, when we talk about lack of insight, or, and I'm spelling the word, Anosognosia, it's not that they're weighing any consequences, right? It's really a symptom that has impaired their ability to understand or perceive the need to take medication. So it's not like, I can't even understand, I don't even get you, right? You're foaming at the mouth saying you need to do it, and I don't even get you. I don't even understand what are you talking about, right? So it's different. Now, let me say this again. What prompted me to talk about this was because of some things that's happening with Kanye West, but in particular his wife, Kim, right? The things that she has to deal with, that people now are laughing about and saying things about in public. Well, they're public people, but I just wanted to let you know that what you see is happening in public with them happens every day with loved ones who have someone with a severe and persistent mental illness. Now, so to the loved ones, as a family member or a loved one dealing with someone who doesn't see a need to take their medication, it can be a long, hard road. One of my partners who works with me on this, one of the words that she likes to use is that you have to have endurance and you have to have stamina. Because when you talk about a severe mental illness, you're talking about ups and downs. There's going to be ups and downs. Hopefully you have a long time in between the ups and the downs, but you're going to have ups and downs, especially when a person is just new to this. One of the things I wanted to also point out, when you're dealing with somebody who's a young person, young age, and keep in mind, just think about where you were when you were 19, 20, 21, 22. You had no interest in taking no medication. You don't want anybody to tell you that you were sick. You're perfect, right? So it's harder sometimes for young people to kind of get it. So they tend to test the judgment, test the diagnosis over and over again. A person who is a person who was doing well in life, a person who was doing well in life, and then now you telling them that they have a diagnosis, that's going to slow them down. And usually somebody like that, it can take them a series of relapses before they get it. Some people have to go in and out of the hospital. Some people have to have several episodes of before they actually get it, right? Some people, it may take them years before they come to the understanding that, okay, this is my diagnosis. My name is whatever, and I'm diagnosed with blah, 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 and I have to take medications probably the rest of my life, right? It takes a while. That is not an easy place to get to. That is to be able to come to the point where you are at peace, at rest, when you come to the point where you have accepted the diagnosis. And acceptance doesn't mean that you've given up. The acceptance just means that, okay, I have a diagnosis, I may have to do things a little differently, but I still can live my life, I still have goals, etc., etc. But it takes a while. It's not that easy. And I think for people who just say, oh, they need to just take their medication, or they just need to see their doctor, you really don't get it. I don't really think you get it. While that's true, it's not that easy, right? It's not that easy to say to someone a young person, oh, you just need to take your medications. You'll be okay. Well, you don't want to take your medications, number one. Think about you. Think about me. Think about people who don't have a diagnosis. Think about how many times you have said that you were going to exercise and you haven't exercised. And you need to lose weight, but you don't lose weight. And you may say, well, that's not the same thing. Well, if you continue to not to lose weight, you can start having health problems. So again, I think it's real easy to kind of pass judgment on someone else's struggle when it's not your struggle. My purpose for today and for our broadcast and everything we do is just to kind of share a different side of it, so that maybe you can think a little differently about some things. Maybe, and just kind of look at things a little differently and have a little compassion on people. It's not that easy, because put yourself in that person's shoes. Who wants to take medications the rest of their life? And some of these medications, not like it's just one pill. For some of our loved ones, they're taking 3, 4 in the morning, they're taking 3 and 4 at night. And some of them, in addition to that, they're going in once a month for an injection, sometimes every 90 days with the new injection. So it's not that easy. Just to tell somebody just to take their medications. And it's not that easy just to keep swallowing those pills. So I think we need to have some compassion there. So number one, for a young person with their lives ahead of them, or things that they want to do, and then being told that you've been diagnosed with schizophrenia. And think about it, when you hear that word schizophrenia or bipolar, what many of us know is what we see on TV, right? We see every time something bad happens, you see that as somebody who they say, oh, the person had an untreated a mental illness. And then now, so who wants to be aligned with a person like that, right? So that's what causes people to stay silent about what they're going through. But I think, let me pause here to say, if you are a person that's dealing with symptoms of schizophrenia or symptoms of bipolar, there's a difference between being what you see on TV or people who are untreated. When people who are treated for their diagnosis, for their illness, it's a totally different outcome than people who are not. So get treatment. Don't be afraid. Don't let the media or the stigma cause you to shy away from treatment. Because the more people get into treatment, the more people will see, oh, wow, you're just like me. People with schizophrenia and bipolar, who, when they're on their medications, they're just like you. It's really no difference. You would not be able to tell it many times unless they told you. But anyway, just wanted to share that point. Again, so when we talk about family members now, it is a challenge. It is a challenge. As my friend would like to say, it's going to take endurance, because there are a lot of ups and downs. There are a lot of relapses, especially when you're talking about a younger person or a person who's never, who just wants to test the diagnosis. It takes a while. It takes a while for a person to come to the acceptance. It may take 4 or 5 hospitalizations. It may take them losing everything. It may take them having to be homeless for a while. It just takes a lot for some people. And then some people, they get it. And then when they get it, those are the people that you see that are leading groups, peer recovery, that are in NAMI, that are, doing, in our organization, we have peers. So those are those types of people who, because now they got it, right? And many of them will tell you, I didn't get it overnight. It took me a while to get to this point, but it's a process. But while your loved one is going through that process, or while the individual is going through that process, from diagnosis to acceptance, in between that, there's a lot of relapses. Sometimes they stop taking the medications. There's testing the diagnosis, I'm not that sick, until they get to the point where they get it, right? It's challenging for family members. It's challenging. It can be embarrassing, because your loved one will say, I'm fine, okay? Let me go back to that. If you are listening to me and you have been diagnosed with a severe and persistent mental illness, keep in mind that the people around you can see you better than you sometimes. So a lot of times you'll say, I'm fine, but what is your definition of fine? And how is that impacting the other people around you? Because you may say, I'm fine, but you're walking the floor all through the night, right? So you may be fine, but you're keeping everybody else up. Right? So a lot of times people say, I'm fine, I don't need to take the medications. How are you? What do you mean fine? Right? Your family hasn't slept all night because you're up. Right? You're out walking around the neighborhood and doing things like that. So again, these are things that family members sometimes have to go through. They have to go through their loved one, especially now in this YouTube and Facebook's generation, the world that we live in. You have to live in the middle of the night. They type and saying just things. I got an email from someone, a random email. And when you're reading the email, you can tell that the person was on the verge of a psychotic break. The family members obviously couldn't get a hook in touch with that person, couldn't intercept the email fast enough. This person sent the email out to a previous supervisor. They sent it out. Several people was on this chain, and it was only like about 2 sentences, but it's clear that the person was in the middle of having a psychotic break. Now, the family member is the one that has to deal with that embarrassment, because the person who sent it out is in a psychotic episode and dealing with lack of insight. So they don't see a reason for that. It's the family member. Being a family member of a person with a severe and persistent mental illness can be challenging, especially when they're going through their episodes, and especially when they don't. One of the symptoms of their diagnosis is not wanting to take their medications, right? So the family member has to deal with it. The family member is the one that has to look at the neighbors in the face after their son, daughter, or whoever loved one was running through the neighborhood, knocking on everybody's doors. Okay, and that happens. You have family members, oh my God, they're trying to do their best, they're trying to do everything they can, and then their loved one gets away from them, and then you find out the next morning that, they were just knocking on everybody's doors. Okay, I had another situation where the person would go into the laundry room and take people's clothes out, or the person would just go through his wife's phone book, right, and would just start calling all her friends and saying just vulgar things to them. So it's embarrassing. And I think as a family member, you kind of have to make peace with the fact that there are some things you may have to deal with for a while, and that is embarrassment. So you need, as a family member, you need your own support systems. You need your people that you can talk to, because when your loved one is in the middle of their episode, and they're at that moment where they don't think they need help, even though you know that they do, sometimes you may just have to wait a little while, right? Sometimes you may have to. And so as you're waiting, you need somebody to talk to. You need somebody to kind of to cry to, to vent to, because they're not listening. They're like a totally, they're the same person, but they're a totally different person. I think as a loved one, you can't take everything personally. You can't, you have to try not to take it personally. You have to try not to beat yourself up. Well, maybe I didn't do this or whatever. No, your loved one is just is diagnosed with an illness, and the illness that they're diagnosed with is persistent. The illness that they're diagnosed with has symptoms, and one of the symptoms of their illness is not taking their medication or seeing a need, have no insight or clue into why they need to take their medications. So during that time period, it can be challenging for the family member. It is embarrassing. Another thing is a lot of stress. You're trying to argue or try to go back and forth with someone, and then as you try, because see, you're the family member, you're the closest person to them, right? Everybody else is just looking on the outside, looking from the outside, right? You're on the inside. So when you say to them, you need to take your medication, you're the one that they're arguing with. You're the one that's actually having that going head to head with, because you're the only one. You're the one that they lash out with. Well, you don't need to tell me I'm taking